Welcome to the Help for Leaders podcast. I'm Stacey Harris, and I'm passionate about showing leaders the power of communication and how it can transform their organizations, from Fortune 500 boardrooms all the way to brand new startups. As a leader, your actions and your words transform people and your company culture. So join me as I share tips and insights for elevating your leadership abilities as well as your team's performance. Let's dive right in. Communicating with the high S, steady style. That's what we're going to be talking about today in our Help for Leaders podcast. I'm Stacey Harris, and I'm so excited that you've joined me. And today at the table, I've got Caleb Lucas. Caleb, welcome to the Help for Leaders podcast.
Thanks for having me.
How does it feel to be on this side of the camera?
It feels nice, honestly. Just like we were talking about in the round table, I was like, oh, it's refreshing. I'm not managing, but it feels good.
Yeah, so for those of you who have never checked out my YouTube channel, you can watch all of my podcasts. We're on YouTube. Just search Help for Leaders, and you'll get to see the man behind the camera on most episodes. Today, he's in front of the camera. So I'm so excited that we get to talk to Caleb, who is this high steady. He's also a high outgoing style. So here's his disc style on our disc cube. And we're going to be talking about your preferences and your tendencies in communication. So first of all, just tell me a little bit about Caleb. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Cool, yeah. So my name is Caleb Lucas. I am 27 years old, single, ready to mingle.
All right.
I'm a high creative. I love to create things and innovate in creativity and make things that people would bless people and make people be inspired. That's really important to me. I love my family. Families and friends are super important to me. I love just connecting with people, just connecting in general. My role at Increase You is the creative director. So I manage a team of creatives and grow the team and set the standard for our creative and our products that we produce, like this podcast, and dream about what is the future of the creative in our company. So I'm kind of just always thinking, like, is it websites? Is it apps? Is it stuff like that? So that's kind of my role.
So good. Thanks, Caleb. Yeah. A lot about people. I heard a lot about connecting, a lot about people, which is that high steady, high outgoing behavioral style and how you communicate. So let's talk about your communication preferences. Okay. So in an ideal world, how would you prefer to communicate with people? What's your preference in communication?
In an ideal world, my preference communicating to others would be just to say what I'm feeling and it just be understood. To never need to clean up the mess of communication or re-communicate, just like say what I'm feeling and what needs to be done, and to be like quickly understood. And it just be simple. That like communication and like there would be a connection between people that you just like kind of, like I said, this ideal world. So it's kind of like if we both could just like pass the information kind of like a code.
Telepathy.
Yep,
yes.
You understand exactly.
Are you a Trekkie? Who's that on the Star? My husband loves Star Trek, and there's something that can just mind meld. Is that what it is?
Yes.
That's what you would prefer. Okay, I heard you talk a lot about like, if in an ideal world, just say what I'm thinking and feeling. Yep. So is that hard for you in real context, in the real world, to say what you're thinking and feeling? Totally.
Well, I think the reason why it's hard is because often, like, one of my biggest, I would say, hang-ups is feeling misunderstood.
Okay.
Like, from other people who maybe not share the same kind of communication styles or behavior styles in general. When I say something and even I can see how it's being heard or received, or like people start acting on the things that I've, or giving them a task and they act on it differently than I communicated, or someone re-communicates something back to me that I did not say. Yeah. I'm like, so I think I've learned over the years to way over-communicate, over-apologize, over-clean up my mess of communication to make sure I'm understood. Yeah. So yeah, I'd say that's probably one of my bigger hang-ups when even working in a team. So
you just said something so fascinating that I want to pick up on, because if you've joined the last 3 episodes of our podcast, we had a roundtable discussion with Caleb's entire team, and we had all 4 different behavioral styles represented. Last week's episode was with Taylor, that high outgoing. The week before was with Josh, that high dominant, direct individual, high D style. And neither one of them, and we're going to talk to Clarilla next week, have talked about apologizing for missteps. And you just said feeling that need to apologize, which is pretty classic high S style, this need in you. So I think it's interesting that you even just commented like, I just feel this need to, apologize, clean up the messes. That's just in high S's. You'll apologize for something that you don't even need to apologize. Like, I'm sorry, but you're like, why are you sorry? You don't need to be sorry about that. So I just wanted to point that out. That's just innate in you. It's just how you're wired. And, be aware of that, because there are times you're like, you know what, I don't need to apologize for this. There's nothing wrong with what I just did, said, felt,
Totally.
So very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you prefer people to communicate with you? What's your preference in receiving communication?
I think it even mirrors a little bit of how I like to communicate. Like, I really love when people have well thought out thoughts. Like, they've gathered the details. They've even gathered the snags and hangups that could occur in their plan, because it makes me not have to think through all their plans.
Yeah.
Or if they're communicating to me, it's just like, even if it's about how they feel or something that has been frustrating, they've thought through it and they've taken time so that we can have like a really well thought out discussion. I love processing with people, even if they're not, like, if they haven't gotten through it yet. But specifically on a team, like, or in a workspace, I love when people present something to me and they've thought through they give me the problem, the how they're going to fix it, the solution, and how it's going to like set us in the future. That way we can kind of move forward. Because I think because my style is a little interesting, because I'm such a helps person, and like even the word that you use, accommodation, yes, such a big part of who I am, that I'm like, do. I'm like, we can do things. And so when people present things to me, I'm like, okay, what is it going to accomplish? How is it going to be beneficial? How is it not only going to benefit the team, but the person that's doing it? It's not going to like, very much like in Taylor's episode, where it's about the people as well. Like, how is this going to benefit the company and also not destroy you in the process? Yeah. So you've thought through the hangups, like, am I going to have to drive an extra hour on my personal time to make this happen? Okay, let's think through a different plan. Yeah. So I like clarity. I love when people have processed it and brought it to me well. So
two things I just picked up on. First of all, the number of times you said the word how. Did you pick up on that? High S's, steady. They want to know how. Yep. How is this going to impact me? How are we going to do this? How? I mean, you said how.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, classic. Every time you said it. And then, which I love, because that is a need for you. And so if we, as individuals, when we're communicating with other individuals who are high steady, high stable, high S styles, if we can answer those questions. And the fact that you said a well thought out approach, where Taylor's episode, Josh's episode that we talked previously, they really talk to think.
Right.
Where your style, the high S style, really likes to process. You want to think through. And so you appreciate someone who brings you a very well thought out approach to solving a problem or presenting an idea.
Right.
And I love that. Thank you for being you and just nailing it on all of these questions. Okay, so let's talk about some time wasters. What are some time wasters for Caleb? What are some things that maybe can get you off track?
I would say personal time wasters of like my own style is wanting to like compensate for that lack of preparation in people. Like so if people come to me not prepared and they want to flesh out, or maybe not lack of anything, but maybe they just came to me in their style, like they've thought maybe they want to process in the moment or dream about something, which I love. A time waster for me is having to figure out the details for them. I am, because I'm that helps person, I'm that accommodation. I love to, so I'm a supporter in a supporting role. I will forget my tasks and be like, I can help you. I can figure this out for you. That's a huge time waster for me.
Overextending yourself.
Overextending myself. And it has its give and take, because it's I love that part of who I am.
Yeah.
But if I don't manage that well, it will severely take me off task.
Sure.
And the list just starts to pile up. And so I have to be very stern with myself and lean on our high C behavioral styles to kind of keep us on the team. But for people like I would say other people, things that cause a waste in time or like a time wasters for me would be that lack of preparation and coming to me with something. I'm like, we're going to circle for probably 30 minutes before we get to the thing, because I want to put into action. I want to like make motion. And I'm such like there's actually a quote from Marie Forleo. She says, everything is figure outable. And I'm like, okay, I can figure it out. Let's do this. Like, I want to make your plan amazing. I want to like make your plan have motion. And so when we sit at a table and we're like, oh, well, this, and we go back and forth, that it feels like a time waster to me, even though I know it has extreme benefit for the person who needs that dream session. Yeah. So we've learned to position meetings where my type of style comes in later on. Okay. And that's how we've learned, even as a team, to flex, because, the people who feel like how I do would be like, oh my gosh, here we are again. And so if we just maybe in a week, we set another meeting to like update us and set motion, it goes so smooth. I
love it.
So
I love it. So you've kind of segued already into the next conversation that I want to talk about is flexibility. So you're already doing it. You're already flexing. But I know when I was in your organization and we did our session around talent insights and really talked about your behavioral style, how you communicate. We did a few team exercises, lots of fun. Yeah. But we talked a lot about style flexibility. And so how has that felt? Is that easy for you to flex your style? Have you seen in meetings where maybe you're holding back, where you're not speaking up? Has it been easier to do that? Maybe some wins or some misses?
Yeah.
Whatever you want to share, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, flexing is I actually really just love the idea of flexing. I think it's just so empathetic and like considerate of people.
Yeah.
And I would say that like it's easier for me, not to like pat myself on the back, but it's easier for me to flex towards people because I'm just like very observant. I'm like, oh, how can I like accommodate to this person, because I know that will be the most like, they will feel the most cared for. I mean, nobody's perfect. So I'm like, and I don't even want to actually.
You're apologizing for yourself. No, we're not starting over. We're going to keep going. You are so amazing right now because you're literally being who you are. You are accommodating, you're covering, you're even in your flexing, you're like, let me apologize up front if I'm offending anyone.
Yes, oh golly. I take very like seriously making people feel honored and cared for. I think that's just indicative of my style.
It is. You're an accommodator and you love people. So, so true.
And I would say wins are whenever I can slow down and be intentional with that. Loses for me is whenever I feel like my plate is so stacked high that emotionally I can't even go there. Gotcha. I would say flexing in general is an interesting conversation because as someone who values the flex, when I don't see others flexing, I'm like, ooh, we're going to fight. Because it feels very considerate and like caring to flex towards each other, even if it goes against how you would, like your natural, what you would do. So
yeah. So good. Yeah. Thank you, Caleb, for sharing all that. It's been so interesting to hear you talk about your preferences and your tendencies in communication. I hope you've learned something listening to this high, steady, stable individual talk about his preferences for communication. He's apologized a few times. He's talked about accommodating. He's really wanted to include people, and that's so indicative of your style. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us today. Next week, we're going to dive into communicating with that high C, precise individual. So I hope you'll join me next week on the Help for Leaders podcast.
Thank you for joining us today. You have the potential to communicate, engage, and lead with significant impact, and my goal is to help you do just that. Whether you're trying to get that next big promotion, scale your small business, or manage a team of thousands, there's always room for growth, and I can help you get there. Go to disc-report.com and find out what style of leader you are by downloading my free ebook on communication. Until next time, lead well and prosper.